In sales, what an objection is somewhere along the way where you're kind of crafting your understanding of the client, kind of evaluating their needs, presenting value, building trust, and then eventually trying to close on a solution where they purchase from you. Along the way, you will encounter what are no's, essentially, the word no. And the word no comes in two forms. At least this is the way I was taught. And it makes a lot of sense that there's rejection and objection.
Can I pause for a second and just note that we got Brian on here who's getting Congressman Massey on, and our typical lineup includes like homeless people that believe in Bigfoot.
Welcome to the Brian Nichols Show, your source for common sense politics on the We Are Libertarians network. The Brian Nichols Show is the fastest growing liberty podcast that brings together people from all means of political thought as we seek to have meaningful conversations about the issues you care about. At the Brian Nichols Show, our goal is to leave the audience educated, enlightened, and informed. And now your host, Brian Nichols.
All right, and with that, hello folks, welcome to the Brian Nichols Show. Yes, I am your humble host, Brian Nichols, and thank you for joining us on today's fun-filled episode of the Brian Nichols Show. I am joined once again by my partner in crime, all things sales, Jeremy Todd. He is returning to the program. I teased this last week, Jeremy. We have a new reoccurring segment here in the show. You and I will be talking about sales, and then Chris Goizetta and I will be talking about marketing, and because I truly believe that it is a sales and marketing perspective that will help bridge the gap. So that being said, Jeremy Todd, welcome back to the show, and welcome, I guess, officially to now this reoccurring role here on the program. That's right, baby daddy. That's
right. Yeah,
that's right.
Go team.
The audio listeners like, ooh, baby daddy. No, Jeremy literally is a baby daddy. His little, you'll hear the baby in the background, 9 weeks old. My goodness, man. And here you are on the show talking about sales, and particularly today, objections, right? Jeremy, objections in sales. It's something we all have to deal with. Particularly though in politics, it gets tough because there's a lot of emotion into it, but the process is the same. But let's talk about objections from the onset. What is overcoming an objection when we're talking about it from a sales perspective?
Yeah. So first, I think it's really important to understand what an objection is. And so in sales, what an objection is somewhere along the way where you're kind of crafting your understanding of the client, kind of evaluating their needs, presenting value, building trust, and then eventually trying to close on a solution where they purchase from you. Along the way, you will encounter what are no's, essentially, the word no. And the word no comes in two forms. At least this is the way I was taught, and it makes a lot of sense that there's rejection and objection. Now, rejections are kind of like when you were in high school, and if you were like me, you were kind of the loser, chubby kid. Well, I guess that would be more middle school for me. I was people look back and be like, he was captain of the football team. What the hell?
Don't worry, dude. I was 385 pounds. I am right there in that same ballpark.
Yeah,
I get it.
But you go up and you ask your crush out, and she goes, I would never be seen in public with you. You are hideous, annoying. I don't like you. I don't ever want to know you. That's rejection. Rejection is you are not good enough for me, right? An objection is a little different. An objection is where somebody says, well, I would, but, or I want to, but, right? There's and it comes in two parts. And what happens in sales or in politics is oftentimes we only hear the but blank, right? I would, but blank. We need to start listening to the I would, right? Or the I want to. That's extremely important. The customer that you're trying to sell to just told you yes.
Yep.
It's like a yes, but. That's what an objection is. So I think that foundational understanding of they're not rejecting you or your idea. They're saying, well, I would, but I'm facing this other issue.
How important, right? Yeah, oh, for sure. And how important is it to separate? Because you just did it right there. You separate the objection from the idea, the emotional attachment that you
Mhm.
have to whatever it is. And in this case, it's not I guess it's not really a product per se. It's more of a service slash an
Mhm.
idea, right? In I guess across the board, because we're talking about liberty, but we're also talking about, I guess, candidates. So you can kind of have
Right.
multiple different ways to approach this. But at the end of the day, if they say, I would, but that's not them being, attacking towards you. That's them acknowledging that they are at least curious enough to say,
Mhm.
yeah, this might solve my problem, but here are my reservations. And I,
Yep.
as a sales manager, one of my main focuses when I'm trying to help with my team and coaching is helping them through a sales process and understand the
Mhm.
different roles of the sales process. And when you come to objections, my instinct I've always taught has been to do three things: isolate,
Mhm.
understand, and overcome. The isolate part, I say, is super important because we want to make sure that the actual objection is the real objection. I say understand because not only do we want to isolate that objection, but we want to get into the root of what's causing this objection. If
Mhm.
they, I've used this example before. If their objection is that they want free healthcare, the real concern is not the free healthcare, but rather the cost of healthcare. That's the underlying
Mhm.
objection. So to understand and then to overcome, right? To kind of go back to what was the underlying cause of that objection, and to be
Mhm.
able to make sure that the solution that we're presenting is actually answering that objection while at the same point in time helping move us through the sales cycle. So, Jeremy, let's kind of go through this because when I was setting up the
Okay.
conversation today, I know as a libertarian, whether it's if you're a Republican with a small L next to your name or a big L libertarian with the Libertarian Party that you're trying to promote, there have been common objections across the board for folks who bear the libertarian name because we
Mhm.
really aren't taken seriously too often. So let's
Right.
kind of start from here. What are some of the common objections that libertarians are seeing across the board? And what are some ways that we can go ahead and try to start overcoming them?
Well, I think the first one, I'm a big libertarian. So the biggest one I hear is, well, you can't win. You're some form of you can't win. It's a wasted vote. You're gonna help X person get elected, whatever it may be. All of those kind of come in together, which shows a really important thing that has to do with objections is that they can all sound they're very rarely the same words, right? Like there's this thing called a smokescreen objection, which is essentially a very creative way of hiding what your real problem is. And I've always felt like those are kind of smokescreen objections down to the core of, well, I would vote for a third party, but I'm worried I'm going to spoil the election or this or that. I don't always find that that's the true objection, and so that's where you're talking about isolate the objection. So they may rattle off a couple other things. Well, I would, but I don't want so and so to win, and you guys can't win, and it's going to be a vote for this party is really a
Right.
vote for that party. All of
Yep.
those things together. But what's really happening there is they aren't convinced enough, right? Something convinced me enough to say, we all live in a world where we understand that the Libertarian Party has an uphill battle to win these elections, right? We don't have the name recognition. We don't have the money. People are more inclined to vote for the two-party system naturally. So if there are those of us, though, who are willing to, against those odds, say, no, we are. What was it that got us to that point? Well, it
Right.
was enough. It was enough value created in the party and in the candidates that solve the problems that we have. So what's really going on here, in my opinion, when somebody says, "Well, I don't want to be that's a smokescreen." So how do we isolate? Well, the first key is well, you have to ask a lot of good questions about what the objection is, right? So when somebody says, "Well, you guys can't win. I would vote for a third party, but you guys can't win, and I wouldn't want the Democrats to win." Let's just use that for example. And so the goal there is, okay, hey, I can totally understand that. Look, I don't want Democrats to win either. So that sort of first phrase is very, very important in handling objections because, like you said, they just presented you with a no. And the natural reaction of human beings when there's a no is that they believe it's going to be confrontational.
Mhm.
And so what you have to do is take it from a confrontation back to a conversation. And so you say, hey, totally, I understand. Look, I'm not voting for Democrats because I don't want them to win, right? So I get what you're saying. Empathize a little bit with what they're trying to do and what matters to them. And then what was your second one? Isolate.
Understand.
And then understand. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the only way you can ever understand another human being is by asking more questions and listening. So that's what you have to do there. Tell me what it is about Democrats potentially being elected that you fear.
Yes. I was
Expand.
I was going to jump in before you went
Yeah.
that road. So yeah, keep going, please. You're on the right path there, Jeremy. Please.
Yeah, and then listen and expand a little bit, because what they're going to tell you in their fear of the Democrats being elected is really, here's what you haven't sold me on yet.
Yep.
And they're going to give you the ammunition or at least the direction to take the conversation next one.
They will literally help coach you
Absolutely.
to show you how to sell them. That's
100%.
That's why the questions are so important. And this is also why I think what I've heard from the responses to the ebook so far, which it's the 4 easy steps to help sell liberty to friends and family, right? That's been the number one thing people have been taking away, is that the asking questions part is the part that a lot of folks have left out of what they thought was sales. They think sales is just, hey, here's
Pitching.
my product, buy it, right?
Mhm.
That's not sales. Sales
Nope.
is, what's your problem? Do I have a solution to help solve that problem?
Mhm.
And the only way that we can figure out if we have that solution to the problem is to actually understand what the problem is first. And
Mhm.
that's to the point that you were just raising up. Let's take that example. If somebody is saying, no, I'm worried that you're going to help get Democrats elected, it's super important for us to understand, well, what is it about Democrats being elected that is so concerning to you? Because then you can peel back those layers and figure out what's the real cause and concerns that they're harboring that's beyond just Democrats being elected, right? Now you can get more to policy issues or culture issues, whatever it may be, and you can dig into each of those specific examples without having to have this just generic, oh, I'm afraid of this happening, or I don't want this circumstance to be an outcome. Now it's going more down to the nitty gritty, and it's helping them reframe things in their minds versus this, black or white, yes or no mentality that I think a lot of us have seen a lot of sales folks promote as the best way to approach it. It's the Dwight Schrute, you're going to buy this object in 3, 2, 1, buy it now, right? That's not how people really buy.
No.
But that's how I think a lot of people have come to think that sales actually is. And in reality, it's not.
It's not. And one of the things that we have playing to our benefit as libertarians is that most of the people in these two parties are kind of selling the same product when we really get down to it. So, so when we ask that question of, well, what is it you really hate about the Democrats or that you fear about the Democrats? Well, guess what? I guarantee you Republicans have a history of that policy. 99% of the time, they are going to be doing that. They're just going to print all this money and do socialism and this and that. And you go, okay, well, what do you think socialism is? The government runs things. Okay, so the military, the police, and all of these other massive spending projects. Well, and you kind of get them to, and it takes some time. You want to work them through. You don't want to be combative, and you do want to be empathetic to their positions on those things. But ultimately, the goal is to show them that, hey, these are one and the same. I don't fear a Democrat being in power any more than a Republican being in power, because honestly, as a libertarian, at the end of the day, people are less free when those two are in power. Yep. And so that helps me craft to my kind of solution, which is we have to support third parties or candidates that are libertarian to break this sort of monotonous mold that the two-party system has on our system. Even if that's through, even the idea, even though I'm not a supporter of it, of libertarian Republicans, the entire idea is to break the current structure, right? And so that's my sales system, is that, look, we've become less free. Every governor, red and blue, locked us in our homes and told us we couldn't go outside under the threat of violence. So I don't know, maybe they're not pro freedom. So that's a little bit of that. The other thing is, I was a physics major before I got into sales, which is a really odd combination.
I was gonna say what a jump that was, Jeremy.
Yeah,
Woo!
yeah. Well, it's because I failed out of physics. I was not very good at it. But I remember I remember Newton's laws of motion, and I think about those a lot in the human condition and human psychology. So one of the ones that sticks with me the most is the law of inertia, which is an object in motion will remain in motion, and an object at rest will remain at rest unless acted upon by an outside force. And so the law of momentum is that the amount of force needs to be, congruent with the size and acceleration rate at which you want these things to move. So basically, they're all laws about change and how do you get things to change. And so you do have to apply some force in some areas. But honestly, if you can get them just move, an objection is an indicator that they're acknowledging that you agree on problems. And if you can get people agreeing with you on problems, well, now you've kind of shifted the inertia. And so they're starting to move in that other direction. And it's much easier to get them to continue to move in that direction because an object in motion wants to remain in motion. And so, yeah, that's my thoughts and breakdown on it.
I like that. That was a great way to break that down, and definitely, I think that is a great segue in the way I was going to go with this conversation, because you started talking about liberty Republicans, and we hear folks like Scott Horton bring on libertarian ideas, and you go at the left from the left, and then you go at the right from the right, right? So let's kind of look at it from this perspective. When we're going towards maybe the liberty Republicans or those liberty-leaning Democrats who are saying, yeah, I would do that, but, right, there's the but. What are some of these common objections? What's going to follow the but, right? What is the, I would agree, but let's start here on the right. Let's start with our liberty friends on the right. What are the common objections that we're going to encounter? And what are the best ways after we've, done the whole process of isolating, understanding, and then overcoming? What is usually the process of going to overcome that from a libertarian perspective?
Okay. So one of the biggest pushbacks I get from the right, and I'll tell you, so you guys know I'm from rural Alabama. Like, cultural conservatism isn't it isn't like a political position, right? It's baseline. It is standard. We have more churches than McDonald's. Okay, like it is what we do. And I just got to say that in that environment, I've experienced crime. I know that the rate of rape, drug abuse, and all of these things. So there is no magic pill, in my opinion, in cultural things. But one of the things that, like, for example, my dad had an objection to was when we say we need to legalize all drugs. That really spooks him a lot, right? And so the way that I have this conversation is that I keep the core motive of your rights and your freedoms and your protections. And so as we were having this conversation, he'd say, I like a lot of the things the Libertarian Party stands for, but I don't want to legalize all drugs. And I go, okay, so explain that to me a little bit. And what ends up happening is he takes the drug issue, and it leads into these other things like, oh, well, where there's drug use, there's crime. Where there's drug use, there's car accidents, right? Where there's drug use, children get abused. And so he's making these connections. And so he's not actually against peaceful individuals sitting in their home doing drugs. He worries that is going to lead to other bad things. And so the first line that has to be drawn is, no, I need you to understand here. If your actions do harm to other people, then that's not something we support, and we believe there should be laws against that. But all we are for is in the scenario where somebody peacefully wants to smoke marijuana in their house, I don't think we should be using your tax dollars to lock them in a cage, take them away from their family, not allow them to have a job moving forward because they've got a felony conviction on their hands. I don't believe we should be ruining people's lives if they don't harm other people or harm their properties. And you can start to see the wheels turning a little bit. And that's the inertia happening, is where we paint these big policy prescriptions, I guess. We throw out like you were saying, we pitch these big solutions without nuance.
Right.
And that's where the conversation has to come in and frame that nuance. If somebody is on drugs and gets in a car accident and kills somebody, yeah, they should probably go to jail for manslaughter. If somebody robs you to pay for their drugs, well, yeah, they should probably go to jail for robbery. But if somebody is peacefully, using a substance in their home, not doing harm to others, that doesn't really go against your values here, does it? And they'll go, well, no, I guess not. And if they say, yeah, I don't like it when people do this because it leads to X, Y, and Z, well, there's also another good parallel to that the right tends to stand up for pretty strongly, which is guns. So somebody owning a gun doesn't make them a criminal. Somebody owning a gun doesn't make them shoot somebody. So somebody doing drugs doesn't make them a criminal, and somebody doing drugs doesn't make them harm somebody else.
Right.
So those two parallels, I show them that, hey, if you believe that these people should go to jail for just having something or using something, that's the equivalent to you just owning a gun to them. You're giving them their argument, right? And so that was how I approached it with my dad. And eventually he reached a point in our conversation where he goes, okay, I'm still really uncomfortable with the idea of there being a heroin store on the corner. Yeah, and I'm like, okay, maybe. But through the conversation, we were able to build value to the point where he says, I don't believe people who don't harm other people should be locked in a cage. And I go,
it's a step in the right direction, right?
That's inertia, baby. That's inertia, right? We're getting there. And so that is one that I find most often from my religious right that I experience and interact with.
Now, how about from the left, Jeremy? Because obviously we see this on the left. There are folks who are more empathetic on the left to liberty ideas. I would say like the Tulsi Gabbards, the Glenn Greenwalds of the world. They definitely maybe, sing in the right kind of key, right, of liberty. They're in that ballpark. And I think we should be having conversations with them as well. But I think we still hear the objections. But, and what are those? What would you say are some of those common objections we hear from the left?
Right. This may not be as specific, but it's one that I've encountered recently. So I had a friend who was actually stuck in Israel recently. He went over to Israel for work. He's an engineer. And his company tried to evacuate him after the first night of missile strikes. Well, there was a COVID-19 test required. And so he had to wait 3 days. And by that time, the airports were closed and they couldn't get any flights out. So he had to spend another week in a war zone, essentially, because of U.S. policies. I was hoping that would open his eyes a little bit. He's an unabashed socialist. And so it was actually shortly after his flight back that he highlighted a tweet from Bernie Sanders that said, we spend $3 billion to Israel on weapons. This isn't even a discussion about Israel. My response was, this is why I hate taxes 101. And engaged him a little bit in that. And he goes, well, I don't hate taxes. I hate that taxes are spent on this. And so what I try to do here is isolate and understand, like you said, so he hates that his money is spent on things he disagrees with. Well, that always seems to be the case. And so I found a lot of effective things with him. And so I would ask the question to him, okay, so what do you believe tax dollars should be spent on? What do you believe is justifiable to spend money on to help others? Okay. And he would rattle off these things. And guess what? We're already doing those things. And so I would say, look, you've got to understand that these two things are inexplicably linked. And so when you support the ability to tax people for roads, for healthcare, for poverty programs and things like that, you enable the people at the top to then spend money on sending it to Israel, on wars abroad, on border walls, on all these things you disagree with. So wouldn't it be much better if you got to decide what happened with your money? And we can discuss, and honestly, I'm an incrementalist. If we want to discuss lots of different ideas on how we can restructure tax policy, because look, I believe it's theft, but I don't believe we're going to convince everybody it's theft in enough time. One of the things that we're considering, I'm going to be helping with a gubernatorial campaign here in Arizona. One of the things we're considering is allowing the taxpayer to earmark where their funds go, where their tax dollars go. That's a step in the right direction towards freedom for us. And so that's the thing that I find most often on the left, is that they want to help. They really do have this desire to help poor people. There's a populist movement right now, but they don't understand that enabling the government to help the poor people also enables them to destroy the poor people, and they have more power and ability to do that. That's a little tougher conversation, and there are a lot of small nuances that you'll get into there. They'll have objections about healthcare, about social equity and rights and things like that. But those are handled in a little more nuance. But basically what you can do, attack the left from the left, is say, hey, I want to help poor people too. I don't want any of my money being spent on war, but as long as it's going to the government, it's going to. But if you put that money in my hands and your hands, we might invest it all in education. We might be able to invest 100% of our money into these things. And wouldn't that make society better? Well, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. I think about it from a time perspective too, because I say, well, let's think about the issues that are happening right now. Do you think that the issues of 2020 are going to be the same issues of 2025? Well, guess what?
Right.
I think the answer is easily no. But guess what?
Yeah.
By the time that the issues that we're seeing in 2020 get through committee, get through the legislative bureaucratic process, they might not get to the floor and actually get into action until 2025, 5 years later, 10 years later, right? And at that point, it's like, okay, well, I'm sorry, the issue is over. I mean, I know we see this in public sector jobs all the time, where you'll have, from project to project, and there's no real looking to see, did the project work? I mean, did what we set in forth as our goal, did we accomplish that? No. Oh, we're just going to redirect our entire focus and all the dollars towards some other arbitrary, milestone that we're never going to go back and actually effectively means test to see, did we accomplish what we were looking to accomplish? So, and I had this conversation with a good friend. She's actually in the show before, Janessa Fenton, where she was, talking about, hey, she's like, I'm proud to be involved in all these local organizations and such for local governance. And I said, hey, no, good for you. Like, do that. But like, I don't think that it's worth all your time, energy, and effort to spend all your time there. I think you're going to find that the things that you see out there as the problems in society, that you can easily address them in the public sector. And I use the example because she was doing, or she still is doing right now, and she had mentioned on the show, helping kids who were, not able to go to schools because of the pandemic and because public schools weren't able to be open. She was doing tutoring for kids. And I said, you were able to do that on your own without, some government program. But think about if you had to go to go to the local governing board.
License.
Yeah, exactly. Get a license or get funding, get approval through the political process. Think of the nightmare that would put you through to have to do all that. And I think that right there, in terms of an efficiency standpoint, look at the past 15 years. I just tweeted this a couple days ago, where look at the things that were not around. I mean, from iPhone to Uber, right? To, from Facebook to what do we have now? TikTok. Just think about the different technologies and the advancements in technology and how fast it's been growing.
Right.
And just think about the new status quos that are being established every single day in the technological advancements. You have a smartphone become the status quo for quite literally billions of folks across the world. Think about what's next. Think about, now that you have all that technology at the tips of your fingers, what else is out there that people can now start to do beyond just, selling things online and engaging in commerce, and beyond just sharing ideas? What is that next step? And we're seeing right now with the advent of, the blockchain, with, non-fungible tokens, with things like, different cryptocurrencies, leading with Bitcoin or Dogecoin or Ethereum. I mean, you have all these new technologies that are out there that are going to be changing the way fundamentally that things are done. And I think that is a great, compelling sales message to really have on our side. And it's something that when we're encountering these objections, both on the left and the right, I think it does speak to, across the board, the merits that, hey, what we're offering as solutions, at the very least, you can test them a heck of a lot quicker and a heck of a lot less expensive than the alternative. But with that being said, Jeremy, unfortunately, we're already getting close to time. So, my friend, how about this? Let's end this episode here this week, because we'll be seeing you in a couple of weeks here, mid-June, with a sales tip. What would be your sales tip to folks here for the rest of this week and going forward into the summer months? Are going to be out there at barbecue, seeing friends and family. What's that tip from Jeremy Todd?
Ooh.
Get in the book. Get in the book.
I'm gonna do what great salespeople do, and I'm gonna steal. Because
you're borrowing.
I'm borrowing, right? We are all great borrowers and stealers. So I think this is the most fundamental book that everyone needs to read.
Dale Carnegie is the MVP,
right?
By the way, he showed it up to the screen. It's how to win people and how to win friends and influence people. Thank you.
Yes, hands down. His first chapter in 6 Ways to Make People Like You is you can't win an argument. I should have highlighted. A man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still. So you are never going to force someone's opinions to change. You have to lead them to it. Yes. And that's done by what we were talking about today, asking good questions that reveal their true motives and helping them connect the dots. That's more of a managerial thing oftentimes than sales, but it works in reverse too. So know the end goal you want to reach and help them connect the dots, and don't be in an argument. A man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still. Dale Carnegie.
I like that. Jeremy Todd, from Confrontation to Conversation. I love the conversation that we had. There was no confrontation, but hey, we showed folks how to overcome objections if there ever was any confrontation when they're going through that sales cycle. And as always, folks, if you enjoyed the episode today, do me a favor, go ahead and share with family, friends, whoever needs, that is, Jeremy, to hear the message of liberty and how to effectively communicate and sell that message. What we're going to be doing here in the show is, yes, every other week, Jeremy will be joining the show to talk about sales, and then Chris Goizetta, who'll be joining the program talking about marketing. And this is exactly the conversations I think we need to be having. And hey, Jeremy, I think we're seeing it across the board. The conversations are changing. Liberty Unity's on the way. It's exciting, man. It's exciting.
It is. And a quick plug, do not miss Chris Goizetta's episode if you're listening to this. Dude is brilliant and so good at what he does. You guys make sure you catch that episode.
Chris is great. I'm so thankful to have Chris on the team, helping us here at the show, candidly grow and reach more people. He's on board with the messaging, and he sees the value in what we're doing. He sees also this correlation between the greater liberty world and this kind of rock and roll world, right? He talked about in the show that we can use that approach that he was using to help bring all these bands, from bands like Fits and the Tantrums and all to the alternative rock world, those types of bands were brought up by folks like Chris, and using the techniques, the skills that he's developed and he's worked on over the years, that he's candidly teaching in school and is a professor to folks. That's exactly the folks we need to be bringing into the movement and listening to. So yes, thank you, Jeremy. Thank you so much for
absolutely.
Appreciate it, my man. Well, hey, how about this, folks? If you enjoy the episode, as always, like I said, share with family and friends. Head over to our BrianNicholsShow.com. Go over to the reviews page. Give us a quick 5-star rating and review if you have not had the chance yet. And then if you are interested, folks, in becoming a member of our Patreon, head over to patreon.com/The Brian Nichols Show. You know it, Jeremy, right? One of these don't hurt people, don't take people's stuff bumper sticker. You can definitely spark some conversations there with that. And as always, if you want to go ahead and get in touch with me, email me, Brian@BrianNicholsShow.com. If there's any guests folks want to hear on the show, or if you want to go ahead and get in touch with me on social media, Twitter, Facebook, Minds.com, Parlor.com, @BNicholsLiberty. Jeremy, what's your social media so folks can go ahead and follow you?
@JTodd601.
We'll include the links in social media, or rather in the show notes for all social media there. And of course, folks, the ebook, 4 Easy Steps You Can Implement Now to Sell Liberty to Friends and Family, is BrianNicholsShow.com Liberty Friends ebook, link in the show notes. Well, with that being said, folks, it's our Monday episode in the books. Coming up here on Wednesday, Brian McWilliams from Lions of Liberty. Of course, we're talking how we can sell liberty, but more from a PR perspective. We're talking about Brian's day job of being a professional in the public relations sector, bringing that to the liberty movement. So, folks, thank you. With that being said, Jeremy, Todd, thank you for joining the Brian Nichols Show. We'll see you Wednesday.
Thanks for listening to The Brian Nichols Show. Find more episodes at briannicholsshow.com.